There's people just trashing his papers on pubpeer, trolls that are running through, digging up papers from the 90s, trying to cancel this guy's career. And it's a real shame. So the whole pubpeer and retraction watch racket needs to be exposed, because I've been getting notes from people that there's Pfizer people on their boards. And so this is basically an anonymous hit group that runs around and drags researchers' names through the mud to get their papers retracted, and they won't disclose their funding. We've dug into it a little bit, and we can see funding from certain donors, but there's also some Pfizer influence on their boards. So it's basically an extension of the peer review system. If a paper happens to sneak through peer review, that's the backstop pharma uses to go and kill it. Mm-hmm. And it's not a very credible system. So I caution people looking at pubpeer as some legitimate mechanism for, I call it pub smear, because I've found that the arguments they use are oftentimes ridiculous. They're ad hominems. They're not well supported. And when I've tried to defend my own papers on pub smear, they delete my comments. The moderators step in.
Wow.
And there's even evidence of one particular person who's very frequently posting on there. Her posts go completely unmoderated. Like you can look at the timestamps of when they get submitted and when they get approved. And so we believe there's a few key individuals that we've identified that are the gatekeepers on pubpeer, and they direct it in a very political manner.
Yeah, it's funny. I investigate some of this too, and it's disappointing when people who exist solely to trash one side of debate then present themselves as impartial in terms of research scrutiny, and that's it's frustrating, because that's what we want. We want people to question things. We want to have debate on science, but instead, what we have is, why are we picking apart 3-year-old studies that are just observational? Like, are they not allowed to make observations?
Right. Oh, they even killed a hypothesis paper from Sabine Hazam.
Yeah.
Like, what is this? It's a hypothesis. How can you retract? So we're not allowed to think about things?
but areas that I think need to be investigated are, some of the NIH's studies into SV40 in like the late 90s and early 2000s that were sort of designed to sugarcoat the polio infection of SV40.
That would be very interesting.
Now that we know, like 5 years ago, if you said all these studies were crap, I would have said, it's maybe a couple, but not really. But now I'm like, pretty much everything is out there is garbage if it's gotten any attention. And that's why I really don't get into the study debate anymore, because if you're in a trial and your witness testifies and your witness lies, everything that witness says from that point on is impeachable.
Yeah.
So why do we allow the FDA and the NIH and these institutions to lie to us and then turn around and claim, a logical fallacy of appeal to authority 5 minutes later? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and that, I think that also happens with a lot of studies. They won't be directly funded by Pfizer. They'll be funded by AID. And you're like, well, wait a minute, they have a $1.2 billion vaccine royalty moving into that organization.
Yeah,
it's not an unbiased, white lab coat that we're speaking to here. This is someone who has a motivation to keep the vaccine as the only solution to the COVID.
So to pivot now to the most recent research that you really got my attention with, one of the things, like when you understand that there is a smear campaign against this stuff, like, and it just happens. There was a smear campaign against hydroxychloroquine, which, shameless drop on my movie. If you want to see more about that, you can go watch my movie Epidemic of Fraud at epidemicoffraud.com.
Highly recommended. And thank you for that little expose you did on Flora. What is her name? Flora Teo, I think. Because she hit one of my papers as well.
Well, she made the mistake of trying to dox me. So I had to live quote her doxing me and doxed her in reverse. It's a whole fun thing. But another drug that was and is and continues to be smeared is ivermectin. And Ivermectin was something that I sort of heard about. I didn't really get too involved in it. I took it a couple of times just to see what would happen. Nothing happened. I didn't die, so I think that's a win.
Did you steal it from your horse?
Yeah, I did. I totally did. So the interesting thing though was how vicious the ivermectin debate was. I mean, people, the FDA calling it a horse paste, to completely ignoring the fact that it's a human medication that is given
Right.
away freely in Africa.
Yep. Been on the list of essential medicines for years. It's
So the question remains: why was ivermectin such a target? And once you understand what they're targeting, you can sort of reverse engineer, if you are a little bit creative, the motivations behind the targeting. And that's why I thought what you told us this past week about ivermectin was interesting. So I don't want to spoil it. You spell it
okay.
out.
So first, this is not any of my like brilliant discovery. I was just fumbling through ChatGPT one day when I was reading Dr. Mackis's work, realizing he's having a lot of success with ivermectin on these turbo cancers. Is there any connection between ivermectin and P53? Is there any connection between it and SV40? And it comes back with a handful of papers saying, yes, absolutely. Ivermectin inhibits important alpha. If you remember the earlier conversation, important, not important, but import, like importing something to your country. Important alpha is what drives that SV40 element, the enhancer and the promoter, into the nucleus. All right, so it blocks that trafficking. So and second to that, the fenben that he's using has an impact on P53. It increases P53 activity. All right, so a combination of those two. The other thing fenben does is it's a beta tubulin disruptor. So it basically slows down microtubule formation. So cancer cells that are dividing very quickly have to make microtubules, which are like these ropes that rip the DNA apart and help in cell division. You may have seen pictures of cell division with spindles, right? Those are microtubules that are making that happen. And so if you have a quickly dividing cell, you have to be able to make microtubules very quickly. And beta tubulin is a protein involved in that. And fenben actually inhibits that. So it slows the cell's ability to quickly divide and increases the P53 activity in the cell. So that's just what we need if this SV40 thing is in fact playing a role with P53, and if spike protein is in fact inhibiting P53. And then ivermectin just shuts down the ability to traffic that stuff into the nucleus, so it would shut off any avenue toward integration. So the combo of those two drugs makes total sense to me for fighting anything that might be negatively associated with the Pfizer vaccine.
Now, what concentrations of